a loader and you, friend, on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memory into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, my friends. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. We're going to be visiting with Blanca and Blair Schaffer out in Panhandle at Texas. Some tremendous folks that are doing some pretty amazing things. If you need a dose of healthy inspiration, I'll tell you, they have some infectious enthusiasm for everything. Just wonderful, wonderful people. Hey, good morning, Blanca. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Jim. We're doing great. How are you?
We were very concerned about you folks the last couple of days. You've been having a hell of a time out that way.
Oh man, I tell you, I'm just grateful for everyone taking care of each other and looking out for one another. You know, our the Excel Energy, our electric company out here, had given us fair warning as to what to expect, and of course, a lot of it comes with just really preparing and heeding to instruction and just really taking care of ourselves and one another. And I tell you what, Jim, those folks like in Allen Reed and McLean and Shamrock, they were on it. They were not only their fire departments, but the communities themselves. They were just taking care of each other. And I loved seeing that and watching that. But also, I wanted to help, but I couldn't because we were so restricted with travel, with I-40 being closed east and west, and just it was it's been crazy.
Well, I tell you, this is an example of this is when it comes to things like this, it's neighbors, it's people helping each other, family. There's nobody asking questions out there if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. You just people pull together, and that sense of community. That's what we need, and that's one reason I follow your exploits, and I just I find you and your husband so inspirational.
Oh,
That right there, fostering development and building that sense of community, pretty damned impressive.
oh, thank you, Jim. It just we appreciate everyone including us and being part of the journey, you
Yes.
know, part of the adventure because as I mentioned before, we had no idea what little Jericho was going to do for us. We were simply just trying to grow food for family and friends and during COVID to make sure that everyone we knew had food to eat. And it has just turned into something beautiful, magical.
Yes, indeed. And that's part two of this story is Jericho. Not only I'm inspired by what you're doing to foster development of sense of community and your honest, sincere caring for people, but peeling back the onion that is the story of Jericho, Jericho, Texas, there in the Panhandle.
Yes.
I photographed that place 15, 20 years ago. Pretty
Mhm.
forlorn, just another empty place on the highway. An empty auto court, really, in an old Packard
Yep.
car. And you have turned back time to reveal something that just slipped through the cracks. This was a dynamic, prosperous community.
Mhm.
It was. It probably hasn't gotten any love since they shut down the post office closed on June 5th, 1955. And after that date, it probably hadn't received any love. I know the people that had it before us, they'd put, 30, 40 head of cattle out there for a month or two during the summer, and that's all they ever did with it. It never received any love. It was just treated as a little bit of tiny lot of ranch land, kind of.
Yeah.
Not big enough to farm, not big enough to ranch, but we'll put a few cattle out there, just a little bit. But it wasn't treated as a place. You know,
Well, 19 at where I'm at in life, 1955 doesn't seem that long ago, but it is. It's long enough for people to forget.
definitely.
And the Ashmead family were the very last people to leave, and they were the ones that lived in that little farmhouse across from the motor courts. And we keep in touch with the cousins.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the grandchildren that had a lot to do with Jericho. The Ashmeads had a garage, and I think it was Elmer. He used to play Texas swing with Bob Wills, and was even inducted to the Texas Music Hall of Fame for that. But just that the stories for that Ashmead farmhouse. And being the last family to leave in 1974, um, it didn't seem too far for us either.
Yeah,
Eh, most of the communities there in the Panhandle along the Route 66 corridor, or most of them date to about the beginning of the 20th century when the railroad came through.
hmm
Is that kind
yeah,
of a round number?
yeah. Ours was built in 1911.
The motor courts.
Yeah, the motor courts were.
We were sanctioned a town in 1902. Mr. Altizer, he was a judge here in the Texas Panhandle. He started out in Hall County, which is where kind of Turkey, Texas is at, Memphis area on 287. And then he bought some land and property here at Jericho in hopes to build a community. What I love about the old newspapers, it leaves a paper trail and somewhat of a story. And his ambition was to build, his greatest goal was to make Jericho one of the best towns here in the Texas Panhandle. He brought in people from all over the country, as far east as Virginia, New York, and then, of course, from Indiana, Missouri. We had some folks come in from um, Kansas. He brought in a prominent family, W.S. Lyons and his wife Amelia, to build the two-story Hotel Lyons right at the Jericho, uh, right where the railroad tracks would have been. And that would have been in that when the tax records we found were in really 1907. And that's when the actual hotel was in Amelia's name. So she was the proprietor and entrepreneur that built that hotel. And we've had pictures of that on our Facebook page. And Mr. Altizer was just a big visionary for Jericho, bringing in a packery. He wanted a lumber yard, which we did get one at Jericho, and we found the foundations for it through tax records. We had to really, what was that? We got the brush hog and a weed eater, but we had to get something more industrial to kind of clear up the
Oh, it's
foundation.
basically a giant weed eater on wheels to clean around the foundations.
Yeah.
Uh, there's such an international fascination with ghost towns and empty places. And I think part of that is the stories of the people. And for me personally, one reason I like ghost towns and hearing these stories, it keeps me from taking life too seriously and realizing how short things are. To make this, we have a goal in life of making this a little bit better of a world than when we got here,
Mhm.
which you two do very well. And ghost towns keep that perspective. Have dreams, chase them, try to make the place a little bit better, but don't take yourself too serious.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and the thing that gets me is once something stops being cared for, how fast it can go down and literally disappear, because so much of our place is just foundations now. We're doing what we can to restore the tourist courts
I'll preserve.
and preserve them so that they can, remain standing, remain picture worthy, and make them safe.
Well, that's important. That's what the co-op did with the Painted Desert Trading Post.
Yeah.
Out
Yes,
there in
we've
Arizona.
been following that.
I'm glad they did it, but sometimes you have to question. Gosh, but it's great to preserve these places, at least keep them from falling down,
Hmm.
because it is a tangible link.
Yep.
I agree. I had gave a phone call and had asked about the painted desert and I had questions, because that is our goal. Um, when we do this on our own, it's strictly ourselves. We don't ask for contributions or donations. And just this month, Jim, we decided to go ahead and form a nonprofit so that we wouldn't lose out anymore, because we have had people offer money donations, even equipment, lumber, but because we weren't a nonprofit or designated it like that, they were losing out. We would lose money, they would lose money. Someone would have to pay taxes on it. And so just this January, Blair said, "Hey, let's bite the bullet and let's form a nonprofit." And um, I'm so grateful that the team that we asked agreed to join us on this path, because we're all uh, working towards a goal of preservation. Currently, right now, our committee is Mr. Beasley, Gary Beasley. He is our eighth grade English science
Sounds-
teacher. We went way back. And then Penny Clark with Texas Route 66 Visitor Center here in Amarillo. We've been knowing Penny for a long time. And Kimbra Watson, she is a really good friend of ours and knows the history of the area. Grew up here around the Jericho area, Wheeler County, Shamrock. She's from that area, so she has a lot of history knowledge as well. And so by forming the nonprofit, we've been able to accumulate some funds now and just start at the basic. Right now, this is where our little cup is at, and we hope to grow exponentially so that preservation efforts can stay in full force for Jericho. Um, we have our little grandson with us. He's tagging along, and we're teaching him the ropes because, you know, when Grandma and Grandpa can't be here anymore, he needs to carry on the legacy of Jericho, and he has a love and passion for it, just like we do, and I'm grateful for that because he could be interested in something else.
If people want to contribute, would that be through your website, Schaffer Farm? Would they find information about the nonprofit?
Yes, SchafferFarm.com. Uh-huh.
I've got that up. Okay, SchafferFarm.com/Jericho.
Correct.
Yeah, very good. It's great to see. And when you have cleanup days and days people showing up with their metal detectors, gosh darn it, I'm envious. Because you guys just a little tad bit far for a daily commute.
Right.
But it's great to see the passionate folks turn out for that.
Right. Yeah, we do have a lot of people come down to stuff like that. We usually get anywhere from 30 to 60 people at the smaller events like that. And then, like last year, we did the stargazing night. We had over 200 there that night. And that's what we wanted Jericho to be, is a place to go down and have fun, do some clean, wholesome activities that, anybody can enjoy. This year, we're still looking at doing a metal detector day, but we're wanting to add in that evening a time capsule berry.
Oh,
So I'm
good.
looking
Yes.
into doing that, and we'll have a 20-year rotation. So we'll have a 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100-year boxes. And then when you open up the 20-year, it'll become the 100-year next. So that you'll be able to open a time capsule every 20 years going forward.
Well, this ties into something too. I've been worried that people are focusing on the Route 66 centennial, And Jericho has, for better or for worse, it's tied into a pretty interesting chapter of Route 66 history. But people have been focused on the centennial, and I'm hoping they will see the centennial as the countdown to the bicentennial. Start planning for the next 100 years on Route 66.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that Jericho Gap situation there was pretty famous. I'm just curious, was that section of Route 66 through the mud there, Jericho Gap, that was also part of the Ozark Trail highway system?
Yes, it started out as your post office trails going from Amarillo up into Oklahoma, so
Okay.
they could get mail through there. And a lot of Route 66 was done that way. It was existing roads to begin with, and then they would improve upon them. And that's what ours was. It's now County Road B, and at the time it was the mail route uh, for, from Groom to Jericho going on up toward Oklahoma. And then, even today, that road is not drivable when it rains. 100 years later, that road's still not drivable. But Congress gave money to pave it in 1934, and we had some people that wouldn't give up their property rights, and that's the reason they moved Route 66 about a mile north where I-40 is today. Almost it was between 34 and 36 is when they rerouted that area right there.
Yeah. What was the peak? Any idea what the peak population of Jericho was when it was really?
That was about 1930. So, of course, Route 66 came through in 1926. 1930, we had the two hotels. We had the tourist courts and the hotel lines. We had a garage, mercantile stores, gas station, school, bank, and about 100 people living there.
Okay.
Um, and then by 1939, it was down to about 50. So we lost half our population in 9 years. Um, and that was due to, moving Route 66 between 1934 and 1936. And, back in those days, a mile out of the way was a big deal. It's kind of like in the not Toy Story, the movie Cars.
Wow.
You move to the highway, you move the big highway in and the Route 66 just dries up. Well, this was basically the same story. You take Route 66 out and move it a mile away, and then the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression all rolled into one right there. The little town just didn't have a chance without its main artery of traffic coming through.
Wow. Yeah, it was a perfect storm between the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, moving the highway. That would decimate almost any small town.
Yep.
Wow. Well, and the railroad pulled out right after the war? Shortly
Now
after
the
the World War.
railroad was there until 85.
Oh, 85.
Yep. But it didn't. There again, as the town started dwindling, it became less of a stop because you stopped having as much uh, people on the trains. It just
Right.
became more and more freight. So as it became less of a stop, the train was just driving through there.
Right. Well, your primary now is Schaffer Farm, growing some food. You've got
Yeah.
a pretty good business going in Amarillo, and using the food that you grow there at Schaffer Farms.
hmm Yeah, we do about 40,000 square feet of garden. In the past, we've done 20,000 square feet, and we did just vegetables. And we do what's called a CSA, which is community supported agriculture. So our people pre-purchase our vegetable shares, and they can get a full share or a half share. So a full share would be they would receive vegetables and flowers every week, and the half share would be they would receive it every other week for our 16-week season. And then last year we dove in and started growing flowers for the first time. So we added about another 10,000 square feet of garden, and it was all flowers. And on top of our CSA, we added a pick your own. So when we're open, you could come down there and pick your own flowers or vegetables also.
Very, very good. This is a real role model, Blair. We need to see more of this. More folks doing this in their communities. It would alleviate a lot of I think we're going back to this, and I think it's very important. It's always bugged the absolute daylights out of me when I go to the store here in Kingman, and we grow a lot of citrus crops down in Phoenix, but
Right.
citrus that they sell in the store in Kingman is it's either from Central America or Florida.
Right.
And for the life of me, that makes absolutely no sense if you can grow food regionally or locally.
Yeah. It's challenging, going to the farmer markets here. They'll start the farmer markets. People want them in May and June, and we really can't have any crops ready until mid early July because we have freeze dates all the way up into May lots of times. And then
Ah,
most of your crops are 60 to 80-day crops. So early July is usually about the. We already have over 1,000 plants growing in our house here already.
I,
And we grow a little bit of everything. I saw somebody ask on the chat group. We'll
yeah,
have your squashes, zucchinis, okra, watermelons, cantaloupes, basically anything that'll grow around here in the Texas Panhandle. And then flowers, we'll do sunflowers and zinnias and snapdragons and cosmos. We tried growing dahlias last year, but the grasshoppers and rabbits just demolished them. I planted over 300 feet, and I probably got four flowers or four plants that lived, and half a flower
That bloom.
oh,
that bloomed on the dahlias. They were loved by the insects and rabbits.
well, at least you had fat rabbits. That's
Yeah, yep.
any long term plans like for greenhouses or anything so you could do 12-month seasons?
I don't know about the full 12-month seasons, but yeah, we're looking into some greenhouses down there. A lot of it's just some capital and time because I'm still working full time as a fireman here in the city, and then also a county commissioner. And I'm planning to retire from the fire department around about 2 years, and
Ah,
that'll give us a lot more time for both of us to be working down there because Blanca will go down there and work lots of times when I'm at the fire department, and the fire department gives me lots of time to work. So I only work about 10 days a month at the fire department, but they're 24-hour days.
right. I follow your exploits on your Facebook page, and sometimes I get tired just reading about the stuff you guys are doing. I just, yeah, that's another reason you guys inspire me because you just seem to have boundless energy for community service, for projects, and then finding time for the research to dig into the story of Jericho, and that's always piques my interest.
Yeah. You know, usually it's um, November, December, and January where I really get the opportunity to um, visit either the locals, the families in the area. The grandchildren are the ones that are telling us the stories now. It's not the children, it's the grandchildren, and they're anywhere from 85 to 95. And so we listen when they call. They'll call us and they'll say, "Hey, I have another story for you," or "I have another article for you." And personally, I've spent a lot of time this season with Mr. Lamb. And I would have to say, Mr. Lamb is probably the last of the actual residents before Jericho, during Jericho, and where Jericho is now. He's going to be 96, and he remembers that Jericho used to be bigger than Groom.
Oh
The,
my!
yeah. The only thing with Mr. Lamb is that you have to talk really loud and ask him questions. But when he understands what you're saying, his mind is sharp as a knife. He'll tell us about stories for the old Jericho airfield and how the airplanes came in. His most fascination was with the train, so he loved watching the Rock Island go through Jericho. Told us stories of bootleg moonshine, and the stories were accurate that we had heard and that we were told. So just listening to his stories, we've got to be there for about 2, maybe 3 hours. We document them on voice recording, and he keeps asking us if we're going to write a book.
In your spare time.
In
Yes.
my yes. But what's really cool is that one of my most favorite pictures this last season that was shared with us was the Jericho baseball team. Jericho had a baseball team and they would play the smaller surrounding towns. Each town had its own squad and they would play each other. So we were able to capture an old picture of the Jericho baseball team, which his daddy would happen to be in that picture as well, which is really neat.
I was doing a research for a project here in Kingman on for Kingman Main Street, putting together a tour, and most of these towns, in the teens especially, they all had baseball teams
Mhm.
that played. I was very surprised to find that some of the local mining camp teams had an opportunity here in Kingman, different occasions. Once to play the Pittsburgh Pirates, and another time to play the Chicago Cubs.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
That happened to stop here coming through on the train.
how cool is that?
Yeah.
Uh,
Another something you probably have already done, but a fellow was researching a desert. Dennis Cassaber was researching Goffs, California, some years ago, and social media, all that was relatively new, but he put out the word that he was looking for stories, information, and pictures, and it kind of became a groundswell, and people started sending him photographs of Goffs, growing up in Goffs, living in Goffs, from the strangest places. He received photographs from the UK.
Oh
The
wow.
he received a box of photographs from Tahiti.
oh,
There was a family that had lived in Goffs back in the 20s.
that's neat.
Yeah. That's something that's challenging to get a hold of is photos.
Yeah,
I think it's just because like our little spot, it just vanished. So I
yeah,
think some of the photos are there in the albums, but generationally, me and Blanca, I'm about to turn 53, and we're some of the younger people doing stuff like this, and we're so far removed. Like for me, my family homesteaded in the area of Jericho, about a mile and a half north of Jericho, in 1894. My dad was the youngest of his generation, and then I'm the youngest of my generation. So I'm looking at these photos now that I have, and I don't even know that a lot of the people in there because they'd passed away before I was even born. And of course, both my parents have now passed away. So I have these photos, and I'm looking at them, and I don't know. And I think that's what happens to a lot of photos is people they think that they're kind of neat, but they don't have that connection to them, and they don't even know who to get them to. Sometimes, that's what me and Blanca we're trying to collect all these photos that we can and get the stories while we still can, like the baseball team, or because if you wouldn't have known, here's just a picture of a baseball team. Well, that's
right.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
No,
Um,
it's a story behind it, and unfortunately, a lot of these photos and photo albums, 2, 3 generations removed, somebody passes and they end up in the dumpster,
Hmm.
and they're just gone. And
Yep.
wow,
I would really encourage the listeners that whatever photos that you have, if you're on Ancestry or Family Search, to document the journey. Because you'll have people like me, decades, down the road that are researching to tell a story. And all of our families have a story to tell.
yeah,
We are all pioneers in our own sense, and we have
yes,
a story to tell. We were picked to be here, right now. And that's how I feel about Jericho. We had very prominent farmers around us at Jericho that could have bought the land, but their banks told them no. But for fate to pick little old Blair and Blanca to be the ones to buy the land. And so now I feel like it's our duty and obligation to share the stories. We're sharing the Ashmead stories, the Reeves stories, the Hermesmeyers, the Lambs. We want to bring honor to the area because it is such just being there, even though it's a ghost town, it is something magical there. People just feel it when we meet strangers. They're like, I don't know what it is, but it feels so peaceful here, and it's I love it here. And I'm like, me too. Let me tell you a story. And so for those, that still have family pictures, share them, put them up and spend an hour or two on the weekends, and put them in their categories and where they need to be. And you know even the ugly stories, we find the ugly stories, we don't share them all. And when we find them, I don't want to bring shame or ugly, because that was in the past. But you do
Right.
find stuff like that. You do, and I've read it, and I'm like, wow, it's
People are people. That's it. And the same problems we have today with prejudices and
mhm.
other things, they had the same problems then. It's
Yes,
it's
they
just
did.
it's the
Yeah,
nature of life.
you're
As far
right. You're
as far
right.
as bringing the peaceful spirit or the making comfortable, I think that's really due to you, Blanca and Blair, because you've infused this property with your spirit of kindness and generosity and curiosity, and I think it's palpable.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
We do our best we can on that. We try to be nice people. Just be nice.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't like
God.
me. I don't
That
like me. Just be nice.
Yeah, that carries a lot. I've shared this with people who know me, have heard me tell this story so often, they're probably tired of it. But my whole quest, the reason I started writing and doing all this is my family had no interest in family history. None. When my grandmother died, my dad and my uncle burned everything.
Oh,
And
Mm.
as a kid, there was a picture of my grandfather on the front porch of the Hinckley house on Hinckley Boulevard and front porch of the house with Henry Ford.
Oh wow.
And I'd ask my grandmother about it. I don't know. Fred and Henry, they worked together. Well, God bless, isn't that special?
Yeah.
So
Uh huh.
so the whole thing started with trying to learn more about my grandfather, who was born in 1865,
wow.
and that's how I got sucked into kind of being a crap magnet for things families want to throw out: photo albums and
Right.
books, travel journals. I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
just was given two travel journals, one from 1919 and one from 1920, that I'm
Oh
Oh,
trying to
nice.
trying to decipher.
Yeah.
What, something just popped into my head. Were there? Do you know of any postcards that were ever made of Jericho?
yes, because I've seen them on the web, but I haven't been able to track them down.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's just been a needle in a haystack venture. I do go to, you know, um, the smaller stores in the area, like your antique stores, and just spend hours looking for stuff like that. Um, Especially with, because like you said, people will either dump the pictures and throw them out, or they'll just put them in an antique store. And I'll go to Clarendon, or I'll go up to Wheeler, sometimes McLean, and I'll just look inside um, a lot of their treasures to see if I can find that. So, it's just one of those deals. If there's an estate sale, that's the first thing I go for. And it's usually in the Panhandle in other towns that I have to go see, because they've moved away. Those families are no longer there. So,
It, and just finding the random pictures, not just the people, you would be hard to identify, but it probably would be difficult if you just found pictures without any connection to know that that was a picture of Jericho, short of something like the Lions Hotel, something that's really recognizable. It might be difficult to even recognize that this picture is from Jericho.
correct.
Yeah. If you didn't know, that's just it. If you don't know some of these photos, you just don't know where they're from. It took us probably a year and a half to get the name of the hotel lines. We're doing some research in some old Mobetti records because I had a grandparent that moved to Old Mobetti when it was Fort Elliott in 1874. He was a young boy at the time. His stepfather was a supply officer in the army and was digging through some records there. And we found that him and his wife worked at hotel. You couldn't read all of it because of the type. And we finally did find out it was Hotel Lines, but we just knew they worked at the hotel in Jericho and it was Hotel something. And it took us about a year and a half to find out it was Hotel Lines. And then once we got the name, we could even do more research. But the type, it was like Ion or something like that. It was just the last like 3 letters of it,
ONS.
you know.
ONS.
And then you get into these things, and there again, going back to my project here with Kingman Main Street, documenting this for the narrated walking tour. You start delving into this, and you find some of the old timers. The stories have been told so often that they're true, even though they're not.
Yes.
And that gets you off the trail. But that's
Yep.
part of the charm too.
Yes, the folklore.
Yeah. And of course, old Delbert True and his wife, I'm sure they've been just a incredible resource.
Oh, Mr. True, he was so funny. He came out to Jericho one day and was looking around, and he was like, "Where'd you get the safe from?" And we said, "Oh, well, it was over here by the Ashmead house, a couple 100 feet away." And he said, "Well, Bonnie and Clyde, used to run these areas. You can just say that the safe came from Bonnie and Clyde. So, hey, there you go."
That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Yep.
Lester Dill did that with Merrimack Caverns in Missouri. There was a urban legend that had been around for years that Jesse James had hid out in the cave. I don't know if you're familiar with this story, but Lester Dill had got Merrimack Caverns about 1933, and it had been a dance hall, all kinds of things. But he found some rusty relics, an old gun, a few odds and ends, and he blew that up that it was Jesse James' hideout. And he took an old log cabin, had it dismantled and rebuilt in the cave.
Oh.
And as the story got bigger and bigger, he actually went so far. At one point, there was a 102-year-old fellow living down in Oklahoma or Texas that claimed to be Jesse James. So he built a little cabin for the old man and moved him there so he could sit on the porch and tell stories about being Jesse James. And he turned that into one of the top Route 66 attractions during that period. And it all started with some rusty relics he found in the cave, and he went with it. Yes, sir, Bob.
Oh, that is so cool. Oh, I have a story for you. I don't know if I shared it before. We have there was a murder at Jericho, and it was in 1898, and it happened to be with Jake Steele, a young man, and Mr. B.B. Ray, B.B. Ray happened to be the great grandfather of Carolyn Sue Jones, the first Morticia. And there was pretty much like a gunfight at Jericho. B.B. Ray ended up shooting and killing Jake Steele over sugar. But we don't know what kind of sugar. Was it real sugar or was it his daughter? So the tale that we've found has been, well, which part was it? Which sugar was it? And
the stories saying that he was stealing sugar from them or flour. They said it was sugar or flour that they were stealing, but there was also rumors of him having relationships with B.B. Ray's daughter, and B.B. Ray not happy about that. So we don't know the real reason.
Don't you just love stories like that leave you hanging, and you want to know more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So we've got both Jake Steele and B.B. Ray buried at the Jericho Cemetery. They are there, and there's a county court document that we've shared that goes with it. But when you start listening to the locals, it was like, which sugar was it?
Yeah. And they had the trial, they actually had to move it to another county, ended up getting so big. So they moved it down and did it at, was it Kittaquay or something like that?
Something
They
like
moved
that.
it quite a way south so they could have a fair trial. So basically get it away from Jericho and the area.
Yeah.
Well, that's another example. We talk about how some things just don't change. The dark side of things, but small town gossips and stories.
Mhm.
That's as timeless as, gosh. I mean, that's just timeless.
It
And
is.
Jericho is no exception. I mean, here's the story they're still telling about sugar.
Yep.
Eh, yeah, they love that
Um,
gossip.
yeah, they do. And we have shared Mr. Hubbard, who is the last living grandson of Mr. Altizer, who was the founder of Jericho. He had come out to, all he thought was that was left of the town was the cemetery. But when we met Mr. Hubbard a couple of Christmases ago, he didn't know. His family had told him that it was all just fables and it wasn't accurate and the stories were not true. And we had court documents and tax records to show that Grandpa Altizer did do indeed what he said he did. And so here this man went his entire life, fascinated with the Jericho story, and was told this whole time that it wasn't true. And he's a couple of 50-year-old kids telling him, "Oh, it's right, it's true."
Yeah.
So the stories that they did tell were accurate. And so just to see that glow in his eyes and to meet him all this time was a treasure. It was a true treasure because it validated him. And when you see that in somebody with stories that were true and accurate with proof, um, that's
Mhm.
why we do it, Jim. This is why we do Jericho, is because the stories and the glow in our our family and our friends that we get to meet, they're telling us something and they're trying to be validated, and they are.
Yeah. And we have people literally from all over the world, whether it's local that brings us a little picture or news article or a story, to people. We've had people from Denmark and China and
Hungry.
Hungary, Australia, and they're just driving by, and lots of times we can um catch them and see them, and we'll just go down there and start talking to them, and they just love it when that happens. But
Yeah.
we're just, trying to do what we can to keep it standing and safe and presentable, to keep those stories going, because I think if me and Blanca wouldn't have purchased it, it would be a piece of ranch land or farmland by now. They came through with big equipment and
Bulldozed
pulled
everything.
out the foundations and what was left of the buildings, and it would be completely gone except for the cemetery.
Those old buildings weren't long for this world anyway. I mean,
No.
they probably a couple good storms like you had yesterday would have
Oh yeah,
probably.
it did a little bit more damage yesterday. That's one thing we are working on. We applied for a grant, and I'm trying to redo the roof of the tourist courts and some of the stucco.
Uh-huh.
And we should know at the end of the month if we're going to get it or not. That's the first grant we applied for.
Right.
We're learning on all that because that's its whole little monster right there.
You might look at, I think it was a BLM project, but give you a couple ideas. There's a little ghost town here in Arizona, Swansea, Swansea, and they went in some of the old miners' company housing. They preserved them in an arrested state of decay. Is all they did was really stabilize the building, put a roof on it, and
Right.
redo some of the stucco. But it might give you some ideas on preserving stuff in an arrested state of decay.
Okay. Yeah, Blair's writing that down. Yes. It's definitely something that we want to do, and learning grants for nonprofits. We're taking all the classes that are offered, you know, that'll just show us what we need to do. This is a whole new market that we didn't grow up in. So, we're the B team right now. We're learning.
Well, yeah, but that's what life is. But you've got an edge up on so many people that take these projects on because you're not just focused on this, you're focused on there again, building that sense of community with your farming, with preserving this history. And you have such a passion for this, and it becomes infectious.
Hmm.
People want to become involved because you're involved.
Oh,
We have had that, and our first cleanup, uh, we had about 50 to 60 people there. We had local people bringing in their little tractors and front end loader type ones, and we had Route 66 roadies from multiple different states.
Yeah,
And it was great, just like I said, feeling that community and then wanting to be just part of something and giving their little bit of help that they could give, and it'd be fun,
yeah,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And we love that stuff like that. That's what we want to do is just keep it fun and keep it light and enjoyable. And what gets done, and what doesn't, well, we'll try again next time.
yeah.
There you
That's what
go.
it's
No
about.
pressure.
Yeah,
We have
Sure.
I was going to say, we have a new building project that, um, I'm gonna share it with you. We got some lumber that was purchased, and we are going to have a building day with the Ashmead farmhouse that's across the road from the tourist courts. We've got enough lumber that we could stabilize the walls and possibly pitch a new roof. So when that comes out, we're going to share it with everyone. But we've kind of been keeping that on the on the quiet level now. But when we do, we're going to ask people who wants to come help build, rebuild and re-roof, and we have the material. All you just do is show up
Very good.
and become part of history, because that's a first
yeah,
for
Yeah.
us, you know.
I want to encourage anybody who's listening, and I will share this when I publish this today, and I'll get a blog post up too about your project and endeavors. But help write if you want to be a part of something. Uh, get a hold of Blair and Blanca through SchafferFarm.com/Jericho or on Facebook, and help write a new chapter in Jericho's history. Be part of something a little bit bigger than you are, and get out there and lend a little bit of support for this project
Mhm.
because this
yeah.
is really important. Do you have a business as well in Amarillo?
Not
No.
currently. We just have the Jericho on 66 and the Schaffer
Okay.
Farm. Now, we used to have Polk Street Nutrition, which was a
Okay.
smoothie shop here in town, and then also Firehouse Fitness, which was a little gym right next to our smoothie shop. And that's what actually got Jericho started. Is during COVID they shut my gym down for 4 months,
Uh huh.
and I went into panic mode, thinking because in the beginning we didn't know how bad it was going to get. They're shutting us down for 2 weeks. What's going to happen? And when they shut my gym down for 4 months, I'm like, how am I going to feed my family?
Yeah.
I might need a little bit more land. I might need to be able to grow vegetables and have some goats and cows. And, we just didn't know at the beginning. So that's where I started doing was looking for some land where I could have some cattle and some goat and a bigger garden. So we started our Schaffer Farm, actually started in our backyard and just raised beds that first year. And then was able to get Jericho in September of 2020.
Mhm.
That's the silver lining of the apocalypse.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. God bless. Guys, I want to thank you for taking time from your schedule to do this because I just really hope people are inspired by what you're doing to make a difference in their community. There's so many different things we can do to make it a little bit better. And step one is put aside differences, find out what you have in common, find what you can do to make it a better community. And that starts by building a sense of community and community purpose.
Right.
Yep.
And and it's even better if you can build it on a foundation of good stories about murder over sugar
Yeah.
or
You know, it's
or
just this.
ghost towns.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, and that's one of the things. This is kind of Blanca's decompression each day is just digging through and finding that history. But we love the way the newspapers were written back in the day. They were
Yes.
literally the Facebook of the day. You
Yeah.
know, Bob from Missouri came down and stayed with
Aunt Peggy.
Aunt Peggy and them for a week and a half, and they had roast beef on Sunday night and had the Schaffer family over, and it's just wild to read some of the way the local newspapers were written. They were literally the social media of the day.
Yeah. When I first moved to Kingman in the mid 60s, Kingman was very much like that. We had a weekly newspaper and we had a radio station here, KAAA in Kingman, Wally Stone. And it was very much like Hee Haw, the old corn radio thing. Wally would play whatever music he wanted. And 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if his buddy came by to go fishing, he'd play the national anthem and say he was shutting down the station for the day. They'd go fishing and they'd spend the next morning on the radio talking about going fishing.
Yeah.
Uh, did Jericho have its own newspaper for a while?
It did.
Yes.
Yes, it did. It was called the Jericho Enterprise, and I had, I've that's the mission I've been on now is just to find out what happened to it, because it was made and pressed right there at Jericho. It normally everyone would have gone to Clarendon, which is about 15 minutes south of us, but um, Jericho Enterprise. It was printed right there, printed and pressed right there at Jericho, and so that's my next project. I got to find that out. Find the family and try. I know the names of the family. I just have to track them down now. And I have to do that through either Ancestry or Find a Grave or Family Search.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my
Well,
tools.
there again, I want to encourage folks too, if they stumble across any information at Jericho, to contact you. Um, it's
We
so
love
so. This
that.
is one of the things you touched on too is how you come out and talk to people. I think that's what's driving a lot of this interest in Route 66. We live in a very cold, impersonal, sterile world, and that kind of warmth, that kind of honesty, that friendliness, people want something more that's not cold and impersonal, and that's a great example. And I work with several people that have done this. David Brenner over in Tucumcari,
Mhm.
and working with Connie Loveland and some others there have really done some amazing things. And I got to tell you, when David Brenner took on that Roadrunner Lodge Motel,
Mhm.
I probably wouldn't have peed on the building if it was on fire. I mean, that was beyond bad. And
Yeah.
but
Yes.
with passion and dedication and using it as a catalyst, he's transformed that. And Connie Eccles, they're in Cuba, Missouri, did that with the Wagon Wheel Motel. And you've got a great one there in the Panhandle, Angela Moreland over in
Oh
McLean.
yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
She's doing great work there. She's making great strides there, and we always, try to send business her way, and especially because we're both harvest host, and
Yes.
she has more of a solid ground than we do, so we always direct whenever there's inclement weather. We send everyone to Angela, and she's going to be our host hotel for our Jericho Gap 5K race this June. It'll be fun.
And,
Well, we
that's
need.
one thing on social media. Always want to encourage people. If you're following a story that you like, whether it's us here at Jericho or wherever it is, make sure you support that page. Go in there often,
Yeah.
leave comments, hit the like button, hit the heart button, share a post when you like it. Really help keep those algorithms up so that the places that you enjoy can be shared, because those Facebook and Instagram algorithms are hard to fight sometimes and
Whoa.
just get buried. So when you do see something, engage with it and leave that comment, leave that like, share the page. You don't have to do it all the time, but if you find something really interesting, give it that love so that other people can see it.
Yeah, gosh, I've had such problems with this social media. Part of it is I'm modern Amish. I don't understand all this stuff. I'm most comfortable in the world of Model A Ford technology, but one of the advantages to social media and trying to maintain pages and keep things going, you never have to look for an excuse to drink. It'll
Right?
uh, it'll give you plenty.
Oh yeah.
We mentioned Angela out there. She has the Cactus Inn Motel and the tap room downtown, and I
Yes.
understand she's running for mayor. But
She
gosh darn it,
is.
that Cactus Inn Motel, what an absolute gem she's created there.
Agreed.
Yeah, we've stayed there a couple of times. There again, it's just given that little place, that mom and pop place, somebody that's trying to preserve or bring back or revitalize. Just give them that little bit of love. Stay that night there, even if it's not quite on your way.
Yeah,
You could stay in Amarillo's. It's an hour away, but stay there instead that night. You still get to Amarillo the next day, and we want you here in Amarillo. Believe me, I want you here. But
yeah.
give those smaller places that love
Mm-hmm.
because it makes a big difference to them.
Yeah. And
We
that's
got
where
a
the
few.
stories are.
We got a few places. My problem with Amarillo is the same problem I have with most places that have more than 3 stoplights. It gets a little crowded. So when we travel, I usually stay out there with the Western Motel in Shamrock or at Angela's in McLean, Texas,
Mhm.
or the Chalet Inn there in Groom. Uh,
Right.
Someplace a little quieter. We're just simple folk.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think staying in the smaller um, property and then just learning the stories, because your attendants, the owners, will tell you the stories. They'll tell you even stuff that Amarillo can or that Oklahoma City can't. You know, uh, it's the smaller net communities that will share, and sometimes more valuable than what we know.
Yeah. Well, you've got some great, every town does. In Amarillo, down there on the Sixth Avenue, you mentioned the Texas Visitor Center,
Mhm.
and of course, old Bob Lyle down there,
Hmm.
and uh, Dora down there, Texas Ivy.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
whole stretch is it's like you're in a small town in the big city
Yep.
when you go through there.
Mhm.
That's nice.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we frequent our friends as much as we can. We'll go check
Yeah.
on Croc and we'll go check on Dora and see how they're doing, and they support us just as much as than anything. For me personally, it was Dora and Croc who got me started on Route 66 when I worked at the Ambassador Hotel and we were hosting the International Route 66 Festival. And that was my
Yep.
first time I got to meet Croc and Dora. And who knew that 15 years later, it was still going to be like that. I'm still learning from them and learning about the roadies and the folks there. But, that International Route 66 Festival, it, it opened doors and it opened my eyes to a lot of Route 66 in general and how much the roadies traveled. Japan was there. I got to host Japan. I got to host rooms from Germany. It was such a wonderful time, and I'll never forget that.
Well, people ask about learning about Route 66 and traveling it, how long it takes, and I tell them I don't know. I've only been doing it since 1959. Uh, but yeah, that festival was great. In fact, that's where you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Yep.
that festival? You were at the hotel there. That's how this whole thing started. Yeah.
Amen. That was awesome.
Folks, I want to thank you again for taking your time to do this, but most of all, I want to really thank you for what you're doing, the example you're setting, not just for your grandkids, but for a bigger audience. And I don't want to give you a big head so your hat don't fit, but it really is appreciated and it's recognized far beyond your neighborhood there in the Panhandle. I guarantee you.
Oh,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you.
We'll give it
Uh,
all.
I know you've got some events coming up, and we'll get those shared as we get closer. Uh, and your schedule kind of prohibits, but do you ever meet with tour groups or anything? Or if they asked to meet with you out there so you could tell some of the stories, would
Oh,
that be
definitely.
something? Okay.
Yeah, no, if you can give us just a little bit of a heads up,
Yes, most
um,
definitely.
our schedule's pretty flexible. It's always full, but it's flexible, especially with a little bit of notice. Whether it's a family coming through to a tour bus coming through, we would love to host people and walk them around, show them the stories, get them on the ground, and we'd pretty much spend as much time as they would like to spend and make it the ordeal that they would like to make it, whether it's a 10-minute, stop with a big bus or a half a day stop with the family. We love doing stuff like that.
I work with, I've got a couple great sponsors, some tour companies, Route Trip USA. Uh, they create custom trips for people. Gilligan's Route 66 tours as a self drive tours as well as guided tours. And I will put that bug in their ear. And I'm really excited. This year, we're going to be working a lot with Austin Coop, Two Lane America, who puts
Okay.
together some just amazing tours. And so I will, I'll put that bug in their ear.
Yeah.
Another thought that just popped into my head. I wonder how far we could test the popularity of Route 66. In other words, people say they want the authentic Route 66 experience. So I wonder how authentic they would like something like a dust storm yesterday, or traveling the Jericho Gap after a rainstorm in a Model T Ford. Yes.
Yes. We've talked
Test.
about stuff like that, and that would be so cool.
Yeah, I don't know how many people, when they say they want an authentic experience, I don't think they want that authentic.
Yeah. That's some of my big plans that may happen, 5 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from who knows, but I would love to rebuild the tourist courts and hotel lines and run them as Airbnbs. And
Oh,
just
yeah.
really looking for that overnight stay. So, like in the tourist courts, keep it a simple one room, bathroom, and really target that Route 66 traveler.
Yeah.
And then the hotel lines, we would like it more of a hotel, but more like a museum.
Yeah.
So we want to have, like in the basement, we want to have a speakeasy and name it the Hamlin Brothers, because that was two people that we found that got arrested for making moonshine there in Jericho, and have a little secret entrance to it, and just cool stuff like that is always running through our minds.
That's why you guys are inspirational, because you're dreamers and you keep chasing the dream. And more importantly, you're not just chasing dreams, you're bringing them to life, and you're making people part of your dreams. You're sharing it. Pretty damned impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, again, thank you. We'll do this again next week. We got somebody for you. We're going to talk to Chris Tuttle, who's got Arizona. He's got the Arizona podcast, but he's starting another program to go with that I think you're going to find kind of interesting. And then we've got on the schedule, we've got Connie Loveland coming up from Tucumcari Main Street. And we've got some of the folks from different Route 66 communities, Main Street organizations in New Mexico coming up in coming weeks, talk about the Route 66 Centennial projects. And we've also got great photographers coming up to talk about photography. Speaking of night sky activities and star watching, that's coming up pretty quick. David Schwartz, you might know him as a great photographer with Root Magazine and some others. So we've got some pretty interesting folks coming down the pike for you. So I hope you can join us. We'll get this published later today, and I will get this shared out on our website. And anybody who's got a website and they're developing, I provide the code. You can have an embedded player if you'd like on your website.
Oh,
It helps
okay.
spread things around a bit. And oh, it sounds like we've had some folks with Margaret up in East Lansing said even Michigan was a little bit dusty yesterday. Didn't get
Mm.
bad.
Yeah, that was a big old storm. Some people here were calling it a land hurricane. It was
Yeah.
atrocious.
Sure, you know, there again, that a Great Depression theme park experienced the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
guys. Thank you again. I won't tie you up, and I so appreciate everything you're doing, and anything we can do to help you, you give a holler.
And
All
vice
right.
versa. Thank you so
It
much.
was a great morning.
All right, my friends. Until
Right.
we do this again next week, we'll bid you adios with a little bit of music from my good friends back in Nashville, Joe and Woody and the boys of the road crew. A little bit of road trip inspiration there for you. Thank you, Blair and Blanca.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Most appreciative. You betcha.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.